default state, single or multiple. So we have, from that, we have the categories. So we have the SQL instruction, SQL data, and multiple instruction, multiple data. So those 4 categories, according to the print taxonomy,
Hi guys, thank you for joining and sorry for keeping you waiting. We're experiencing some technical issues. Please give us about 3 minutes and then we can get started. Thank you for your patience, everybody. In the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Tell us who you are, what you do, and what you're looking forward to in today's session. I hope you all can hear me. Kindly confirm. Thank you. Just a few minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you, everybody.
Learning about something.
Kindly mute out if you're not speaking. Thank you. Albert, I'd like to request you to project your screen so that it can move to the next stage once we're done with the introductions. Kindly share your screen if you don't mind. I don't think we can hear the music. It's playing, but we can't hear it. Yeah, now we can. Internet. Can everyone else hear the music? Yeah, we can hear the music. Oh, but I think it's okay. You can pause it because we still can't hear. We'll just take like an extra minute and then we'll get started. In the meantime, please introduce yourself in the chat box. Please tell us what you do and what your expectations are of the session. And then afterwards, we can review the expectations and see whether we've met them.
Nasikiza meeting.
Kindly pause, kindly mute if you just joined. Oh, Paul from Migori, thank you for joining us today. Let us know what your expectations are from the event we have today. It's good to hear. It's good to see that we have people from outside Nairobi joining our webinars. So welcome, welcome. Welcome, Precious. Oh, that's really good to hear, Paul. I hope you get to learn from this session. Albert is an expert in this section, so I am sure that you'll come out with really good tips. All right, I think in the interest of time, we can get started. We are 10 minutes past the time we were supposed to start. So I'll just do an introduction of what the session is about. And I mean, I'll do an introduction of Moringa and then I'll pass it to Albert to take it over from there. So Albert, please go to the next slide. Yes, so this is how the agenda looks like. So first, an introduction of myself and any person who's from Moringa in this webinar. And then we'll get into the workshop. We want to maximize the workshop time. So you'll notice that we'll allocate more time for the workshop. And then we'll go into the course overview for software engineering. And then we'll have a Q&A section. So I think we can actually start with an overview of the course so that we can dedicate the rest of the time to the workshop. So if you can go to the next slide, I'll just do an introduction of how our software engineering course looks like, which of course is tied to what we are talking about today. So I'll talk about the web track because that's what we'll be covering more of today. So the software engineering web track has two options. It has a full-time option and a part-time option. The full-time option is split into remote and hybrid. So hybrid is a mix of in-person and remote, where you have some days where you are coming in person to class and some of them you're learning remotely. The remote option is fully online. You can learn from anywhere in Kenya and even other parts of the world, honestly. It doesn't have to be in Kenya only. So it's and then we also have the part-time option, which is more for people who have other engagements and cannot attend full-time classes. Think about working professionals or students already engaged in school that they cannot do a full-time course. So the part-time option is best for them. So our full-time options and part-time options take 23 weeks and 30 weeks respectively. And then the learning schedules for our full-time is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So think about a normal working day or a normal learning day for everyone. So 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday. And then for part-time, because I said it's more flexible, you're able to do evening classes from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then we have a weekend class on Saturday to cover most of what you didn't cover during the weekday. So 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., which is a guided session with a technical mentor. So the technical mentors are what we refer as teachers in Moringa. In terms of tuition, you pay 174,000 for remote classes and 200,000 for hybrid and part-time. What you need to join, we are looking for people with background in, at least you should have graduated from high school. The grades are not very important for us. We really care about what kind of mindset you're bringing and what your passion and drive is when you're coming into the course. We're also looking at university graduates or ongoing students. So you either have graduated from uni or are still ongoing, and you can take the part-time option if you are. And then working professionals, those who are looking to get into tech or already in tech and are looking to upskill. So you also should have a background of computer, at least have knowledge about how computers work, because we won't train you when you join the course. And then what I mentioned about passion, you should be very passionate about coding, because remember, this is a boot camp. It's your mindset that will help you succeed. So you need to be very positive. You need to have a very positive mindset and a growth mindset, that you're willing to push yourself above and beyond, because the course, a bootcamp means that the course is very intensive. It's accelerated learning. It's basically what you'd have. Say uni takes 4 years, but in Moringa you're taking about 6 months to learn the same. So the content is accelerated. So it means you have to keep up with the pace. So you have to have a growth mindset for you to be able to keep up. And then we do not provide laptops. You also need to have a laptop of your own, and these are the recommended specs. And then you also need to commit to the whole course of study. We require you to go through the whole 23 or 30 weeks without dropping out, because we want you to succeed and we want to see you graduating. So of course you should be able to commit to the whole period of study. Next slide, please. I'll take questions on the chat box if you have any. Next slide, please. Yeah, so at the end of software engineering, there are a couple of careers you can explore, and some of them are listed on the screen. I think Albert moved a bit fast, but we'll go back to that. But in terms of how to make your application, all applications are made online. It's okay, Albert, you can move to the next slide. Thank you. So in terms of applications, we do not require you to come to our space to do applications. You can make your applications online. Just visit our website at moringaschool.com and submit your application. Part of admissions will require you to do an assessment where we test on math and logical reasoning, just to make sure that you're a right fit for the course. And of course, some questions on your computer knowledge. Remember, I mentioned that you need to have computer knowledge before joining Moringa. So those are some of the things we'll be testing. So you submit your assessment. Depending on whether you pass or not, then you're directed to the next path, which is mostly payment if you pass, or an interview if you do not, and we'll explain the why you did not and see how we can support you to make sure that you're able to move to the next step. And then, yeah, this is where the last step is where I'm talking about you receive communication about the decision based on how you performed during the application. Next slide, please. So in terms of fee payment, you have 3 options you can explore. If you're able to pay upfront, even better, because that means you'll not incur any extra costs. So you can pay upfront if you're able to. If you're not, we provide installment plans, up to 4 installment plans. So it's up to you based on your capability to pick an installment plan that will best suit you. And then if you're completely not able to pay the school fees, then that's where we come in with our partial financial aid, which is need-based. It doesn't mean that everyone qualifies. So you'll go through a thorough process where we'll review your application to make sure that you actually need the financial aid. So they are in 2 forms. We either have student loans. We work with Aspira. Kindly mute yourself if you just joined.
Recording.
Kindly mute yourself, thank you. So you can either get student loans from Aspira, who we've partnered with to provide that for people who are in need, or we also have a partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, where we offer up to 70% partial financial aid. But like I said, this has to undergo a rigorous process to verify that you actually need financial aid. So yeah, that's basically it when it comes to the admissions process or application process. I'm happy to take more questions on the chat box, but I would like to dedicate more time to the webinar or the workshop so that you're able to pick skills that would lead into you joining our software engineering course. So for now, I'll pass it back to Albert to take us through the session, but please type all the questions that you have on the chat box and I'll be happy to take all of them. So in terms of our upcoming intake, sorry, I might have forgotten this part. We have a February 26th intake, which is currently ongoing. All slots are reserved on a first come, first serve basis. So the earlier you make your application, the better, because it's very competitive and we have slots getting filled up really fast. So if you're interested, please make sure that you submit your application early enough so that you can guarantee your spot in class. That's it from me. I'll pass it to you, Albert, to go to the next part. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. I hope I'm audible enough when anyone can hear me. Can you confirm that? Am I audible enough?
Yes, we can hear you. Kindly,
Kuja
John, please mute yourself and someone else is speaking. Kindly mute yourself if you've just joined. We can hear everything in your background. Yeah, thank you. Back to you, Albert. We can hear you.
Thank you so much and welcome to this webinar. So for today, we'll just be talking about mastering Git for efficient code management. And my name is Albert Bell. I'm a student, a software engineer, and a technical mentor here in Moringa School, where we do amazing things. So for the agenda of this webinar, one, we are going to gain comprehensive understanding of Git. We're also going to learn how to create, clone and manage Git repositories. And then you're also going to learn some basic Git commands for, staging, committing, and tracking changes. I know for now they might not be making sense, but they'll make sense as we continue with the session. And then you also explore on branching and merging strategies for effective collaboration. So basically, how do you collaborate effectively and efficiently with other people? We're also going to jump into things like stashing, rebasing, and resolving conflicts. So what happens, for example, when you have conflicts between two files, especially when using Git. And then I'll also give you a clue on how to write clear and concise commit messages. And I'll also tell you what these commit messages are during the session. And then lastly, we link the concept of Git and how now we can use Git with GitHub. So basically, this is the agenda of this particular session. So I love combining both practical and theoretical bit of it. So I'll be jumping from one slide to the other one. Also jumping from the slide to my text editor just to show you on how to use this. Now, some things to keep in mind, the keywords that you'll hear me talking about more often is branching, cloning, and forking, stashing, rebasing, and resolving conflicts, a commit message. We also have pulling and pushing, and also we have merging, and lastly, GitHub. So these are some of the words that you'll hear me talking about as I continue. So what is Git? A beginner understanding of Git is just basically an open source and a free source control management. So when I talk about something, a source control management, basically with Git, it means you can manage changes to a file over a time, and you can also go back and see the changes that you basically made using Git. So it's just like a way of managing or tracking changes within a file. So that is what basically is Git. So since we know what Git is, so how do we then use Git and how do you incorporate Git? So that's the next thing. So before I jump to that, so I'm going to stop sharing this in a minute and I'm going to share my entire screen Just give me a second for that. Just give me a second.
So Albert, as you're doing that, it seems like you are not very audible. So just make sure that you're closer to the mic, or if you're using earphones, you might want to switch that up. It sounds like you're very far from the microphone.
Okay.
Are you still there, Albert? Can you hear me, Albert? Okay, he's rejoined. There you go.
Oh, sorry guys about that. Let me just share my screen in 1, 2. Oh, hope you can see my screen. So cool. So how do you then install Git? Now to install Git, one, it depends with the kind of operating system you're using. But for the official documentation, you can just Google Git, and then you'll go to the official documentation, click on downloads, and then check the operating system that you're using. So it can either be Mac OS, Windows, or Linux, and then follow the installation process. And for me, I'm using Ubuntu. So I have mine installed. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out my terminal, or you call it a command line interface, for us to interact with Git. So I'll open my terminal. And this is the default terminal that comes in with Ubuntu. So with the assumption that I've followed all the instructions that is here and I've managed to install Git successfully, I'll open my terminal, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check if Git is successfully installed. Now, for you to do this, what you need to do is you have to use a command for that. And the command is git --version. So basically, what this does is it's going to check the version of Git installed in your machine. So if at any point you don't have Git installed, then it won't give you the version, but rather it will yell at you with some syntax. Now, with Git installed in my machine, the next thing you have to do is you have to configure Git. The reason we are doing this is, remember, with Git, you are going to track the changes that you are going to make in a certain file. And it is advisable for us to know, one, who is making this particular change and at what time was this particular change made. Now, Git gives us some commands to do this. For instance, the normal configuration that we always do is you have to configure your username and your email. And for us to do this, we use the command git config --global So basically, it means I'm doing these configurations globally in my entire machine. And then the first thing you're going to do, you're going to have the user dot name. Then you'll have your name in quotes. So whatever name you're using for me, I'll use Albert Byron. Then you press enter. That is configuring your username. Then the next thing is to configure the email. So you'll do the same. It will be git config global user.email. Then you'll have the the email address that you want to use. For example, I can use albert.byron@moringaschool.com. Then you press enter. So the reason why I'm not pressing enter is because I have the configurations already in my machine. And for us to confirm that, I'll use another command that git gives me, that is git config. Then I want to see a list of the configurations that I have. Sorry. Git config -- list. And if you do that, you can see I have the user.name set to my username, and also the user.email set to a certain email address. And I also have some configurations, and I'm going to talk about the last configuration, which is the init the default branch to be the main. So basically what this means is set my default branch to be called the main. So each point I'll be making any changes, then it will change those particular changes to my main branch. So the way to exit that, you can do quit. You just press on Q on your terminal, then it will jump out of that. So with that, we have a clue of what Git is. We also have a clue on how we can configure Git with our machine. Let me pause and ask if there's any question up to there before we continue.
Should we configure it now?
Yeah, you can do that with me, or you can also watch and then you do it on your own. So it depends on whatever you want.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm now going to create some sample files within my machine, and then I'm now going to tell Git to help me manage these particular files. Remember, we said Git just help us to manage changes or track changes in a certain file. So the assumption is you are working on a project and you have some multiple files that you want to keep track of. Now, for me to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to my desktop using the terminal. And for me to move from one folder to the other one, or for me to move from one point to the other one, using the terminal, we use a command called cd. So cd means just change the directory from one point to the other. So cd, then the location that I want. And for me, I want to move on to my desktop. So I'll do that. So with that, you can see there's something here, desktop there. So it means I'm currently at my desktop folder. And within the desktop folder, I'm going to create a folder. Now for the guys using Windows, you can just create a new folder. The same thing happens to Linux and the same thing happens to Mac. But I'm going to use the command line to do this. The reason why I'm doing this is with Git, you have to equip yourself with this command line. And there are some basic commands that you must have at your mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder within my desktop folder. And for me to create a folder, you use a command called mkdir. So I'll say mkdir. And basically what this means is just make a directory. So a directory is just like a folder. So I'm going to create a folder and just give it maybe webinar. right? I'll press enter, and then I'll jump that particular folder again using CD, then the folder name. So the folder name is webinar. Press enter. Again, if you check here, it says I'm on the desktop, but within that particular desktop, I'm also in another folder called webinar. And for now, my desktop is empty because I don't have any file in this particular folder. And for me to confirm that, or for me to list the files that are in this particular folder, what I'll do ls. So basically means list. Okay, so and you do list, you can see I don't have anything in that particular folder. Right now, it's still empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file within that particular folder. And for you to do that, again, you use a command called touch. So basically, you're going to touch something. So touch the file name. So the file can be with any extension that you have. For instance, I can touch a .html file. You can touch a .txt file. You can touch a .py file. It depends with whatever you want. And for me, I'm just going to have a very simple file. I'll say index.html for this case. And for me to confirm if that file is there, again, I'm going to do the ls. And you can basically see that I have a file within that particular folder called the webinar. And up to this particular point, what I have is just a normal folder within my computer, a normal folder within my laptop. Now, how do we then now use Git within this particular folder? Now, for us to use Git, we have to tell our machine, this one is a Git repository. When I said something is a Git repository, basically I mean this one is a Git folder. And for us to do that, the command we use is we initialize this particular folder using the command git init. Now, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you every file that is within this particular webinar folder, including the hidden folders. So how do we show that? So you use the ls, which will list everything, but I'll do this particular, I'll add this particular line. So I'll say ls -al. So basically this one means just show me the files that are within this particular folder, including the hidden folder. So if I press that, you can see I only have an index.html right here within the folder. So forget about these ones. These are just permissions issues that are within that particular folder. But I want us to focus on the first I have. So right now, I only have one file. So that is a normal folder that we have within
Albert?
within the
Moment. We can see the page. Please move the page up. We can see or minimize the screen.
Okay. So we have the mkdir to create the folder. Then I'm moving into that particular folder. So cd into that particular folder. Then ls is just used to list everything that is in that particular folder, rather the files that are in that particular folder. And you can see there was nothing in that particular folder. That's why it's empty. Then I've created a file called index.html using the terminal. And for you to do that, you use the command touch, then the file name. So for me, it is touch, then the index.html. And for us to check if that file was successfully added, I've again ls, and then you can see I have the file there. Then moving on, this command was just basically to see or rather to list all the files, including the hidden files within that particular folder and within the webinar folder. And for us, we are seeing we only have one file called the index.html. Now, the next thing that I want to do now is I want to initialize or rather convert this particular normal folder that I have into a Git repository. With that, the command that you use is to use git init. So basically what this one does is just initialize or rather convert this normal folder into a Git folder so that Git can now help you manage, rather track the changes that are in that particular file, okay, or in that particular folder. So I'll do git init, and when I press enter, you can see it tells me initialize an empty Git repo, and then the path to that particular file or to that particular folder. So I'm initializing that, and then it has added me a new folder called .git, okay? So for us to see this particular folder, it has a dot before the name. So this one means the folder is hidden. And for us to see this hidden folder, I'll use the command ls-al. And when you press enter, you can see something has been added to the folder. So we have a .git added to the folder. So basically this means I have converted that particular folder into a Git repository. And right now the repository is within my local machine. So that is how you convert a normal folder into a Git repository so that Git can now help you to track the changes that might happen within that particular folder. Again, I'll pause there and ask if there is any question. And also, I'm going to respond to the questions that are there on the chat. Cool. So someone is saying mine ain't creating. So are you using Ubuntu or using Windows? So when using Windows, when you install Git, it comes with Git Bash. So just open Git Bash within your programs, then it will help you do that. How can I install Git using terminal? Just do sudo apt install Git. Apt install Git. It will help you install Git through the terminal. That is if you're using Windows. Sorry, if you're using Ubuntu. But if you're using Windows, you have to install it in a very different way. And to help you do that, just jump to the official documentation, click on the downloads, select the OS that you're using here. For example, if you're using Windows, it has all sort of instructions on how to do that. So click on the download, you can follow those instructions. But one thing you're supposed to know, when you install it in Windows, it will come with a Git bash. So Git bash is just like a command line that we are using right now. It will be something like this in Windows, or this will help you to maneuver around and to work around with the commands that we are using right now. That is for the Windows. If you go the Linux way, basically you will do sudo apt get then install. For us, we'll install Git, and we'll have this one to jump. When you do this, it'll prompt you to enter your password. You can see for me, it's already installed. That's why I'm getting Git is already installed, the newest version that is there. So mine is already installed. So I hope that makes sense to everyone on the installation. Cool. So now I have a folder, and the folder is now a Git repository. I have a file in this particular folder, right? So if you do ls, you can see I have a file. Now for us to view the status of our repository, Git gives us a command called git status just to check the status of our repository. Okay, just a minute. Now, something to note, I'm still working in the folder I created called the webinar, and I've just converted that particular folder into the Git into a Git repository. So you have to be working in that particular folder. You have to be working in that particular folder. So how do you move on from one folder to the other one? Again, you use cd, then to that particular folder. So assuming I was within my desktop folder, just to show you, let me just do cd with 2 dots. So cd with 2 dots means just go back to the previous folder. So you can see I'm within the desktop folder where I'm highlighting. I'm within the desktop folder, and I want to move to the webinar folder. Now within my desktop folder, I have a lot of folders. Just to show you, if I do ls, you can see I have a lot of things here, but my target folder is the webinar folder, right? And the webinar folder is here. So I want to move on to this particular folder. So how do you move to this particular folder? For you to do that, you do cd, then the folder name. Now the folder name is webinar. That is what I have. So I'll do cd to webinar, then press enter. And you can see above the path has changed from desktop to desktop /webinar. So it means I'm currently within the webinar folder, and that webinar folder again is already converted to a Git repo using the command git init. So if I do this git init command again, you can say it's telling me I'm reinitializing the existing repo. So it means the .git folder already exists within that particular folder. Now, to continue from where I left, I added a file, and the file name was index.html. And again, just to see the file, you use the command ls. Now, for us to check the status of our Git repository, remember Git is helping us to track everything that is in this particular folder. Now, for us to check the status of the repository, we use a command called git status. Now, if you do git status, something happens.
Albert,
You can see.
move the page up.
Yes.
Please move the page up. They can see.
There.
Not quite. Is it possible to move it a bit further up?
Mhm. What about there?
Still hidden.
Wait, hidden?
Not hidden, but it's not very visible. You're here at the, what do you call it? A footer? I don't know. The footer of my screen. Kuko chini. You can see? Okay, then they can see. You're good then.
Yeah, cool. So let me just zoom a bit so that you can see the wordings. Cool. So right now we have a file there, and I've just checked the status, and you can see we have some syntax on the screen. So it's saying right now we have an tracked file, and you can use git add to include this particular something to be committed. Now, to explain what happens, when using Git, every file has something we call a life cycle. And Git, basically, a file has 3 stages that it has to go. And I'll explain these stages as we continue. So the first stage is the modification stage. The modification stage is just add, or rather make changes to this particular file. Nothing happens after that. So make changes to this particular file. Then, after making the changes to this particular file, move it from that particular modification stage to a staging stage. So staging stage tells Git, now can you now keep track of anything that is going to happen to this particular file. And the last stage is now the committing stage. So basically, committing stage, I'll explain as we continue. Basically, it means take this particular record and store it to Git, right? And right now, when I'm talking about Git, I'm talking about the local repository that I have within my laptop. Now, so what command do we then use to tell Git to move these particular files from one stage to the other one? So where I'm currently at, I'm still modifying my file, right? So I'll jump to index.html. Feel free to use any text editor that you want. I'm just going to use Vim just to edit that particular file. So I'll use Vim. Let me just use VS Code. So I'll use VS Code and just open that particular file. Okay. Feel free to use any. So I'm going to open this current folder in VS Code. And when I open that, you can see I have a file that you can check from here. I have a file called the index. So I'm just opening that particular index. And I'm just going to add something simple. I'm just going to add a H1, which say webinar landing page, right? Nothing else. So after doing this, I'm going to save that particular file. Then I'll jump to my terminal. Again, nothing has changed. If you check status, I still have that particular file. So how do I tell Git to move this file from the modification stage to the staging stage? We use a command called git add, okay? So with git add, it means moving the file from the modification stage to the staging stage. Now with git add, you can add a single file, or you can either decide to add multiple files. So how do we do this? So you can use git --all. So this command will add every file that is within that particular folder or repository called the webinar. But also you can also do git hyphen A to mean add everything that is within this particular folder, but you can also use git add and the dot. So the dot means the current folder. In our current folder is the webinar folder. So it will add, rather it will move everything in this particular Git repository from the modification stage to the staging stage or the staging area. And for me, I have only one file, so I'm just going to add that single file. And for you to track that file, you use git add, then the file name. And the file name is index.html. You press enter, nothing happens. But if you do git status again, so I'll jump back to the previous command that I had. And for you to do that, you can use the up key or the arrow up in your keyboard. So I'll just do git status. When I press enter, something has happened. One, you can see the color of the file name has changed from red to that particular color, right? So basically what it means, this particular file has moved from the modification stage to the staging stage. So the staging stage basically means get this file ready to be, added to the database, right? Make this file ready to be committed to GitHub, okay? So the first command is git add, which moves that particular command, rather that file, from the modification stage to the staging stage. And then if you do that, one of the things you're supposed to see is the file color is going to change from red to that green color. Now, the next command that I'm going to do is now I'm going to commit this particular change, right? So git commit is just a simple way of, just think about having a history book and you want to add an entry to that particular history book, right? So adding an entry to that particular history book, for us, we are just going to commit that particular change to GitHub. Can you edit a stage file? No, you can't edit, but what you can do is you can take it back to the previous stage, right? To the modification stage,
But
make the changes, and
they
then
can see.
commit on other.
Hi,
Pardon?
can you hear me? They can see.
Yes.
Please move the page up again.
I'm just here. I've not done anything. I'm just
Someone commented that they can see. All right.
cool. So you can't edit any file within that particular. You can't edit at that particular point. You just have to take it back to the previous the previous stage. Now, the next command that I'm going to use is git commit. Now, this is what we call the commit stage, okay? So basically what commit means, take a snapshot or rather a screenshot of your repository at that particular point, okay? Take a screenshot or a snapshot of the current status of your repository at that particular point. So how do you do that? So use the command git. Now we are using git, so we must use git. Git. What the fuck? Sorry guys. Sorry guys, I had a glitch with power. I'm really sorry about that. So use the command git commit -m. So basically this means add, or rather attach a message or a comment to this particular snapshot. So for example, I'll do git commit -m with the message. The message should be in the quotes. So I'll do, for example, I'll have add the index file. And I want you guys to pay attention to how I'm writing my commit messages. Now, when writing a commit message, by default, automatically, it should be in a position to complete a word. This commit will do something. For instance, this commit will add the index file, right? So with this, what I'm doing is I'm just attaching a comment or rather a message to the snapshot that I'm currently taking. So a snapshot is like taking a screenshot of something. So basically, I'm taking a screenshot and saving that screenshot as add the index file. Now with Git, it means take a snapshot of the repository at this particular point. So I'm going to do git commit message, then add the index. So when you do that, you can see something has happened. So it's saying one file has changed, one insertion. So we have a plus, it means something has been added. And we have a create mod, some number that is there, and then the index.html. So basically, I've taken a snapshot, and that snapshot is saved uniquely using this particular unique number, right? So this one is how I'm going to identify that particular snapshot that I have taken with that particular commit message. Maybe I'll pause there and ask if there is any question on how to do the git commit.
Feel free to unmute if you have any questions, please. And if you can't unmute, just type on the chat box.
So basically what we've been doing is we've been just interacting with Git in our local machine, okay?
Seems like we have some questions. You wanna take those?
Cool. So must we use the terminal? Can use graphical 1, 2. You can use any, but again, I'll advise you guys to equip yourself using the terminal, because when using Git, the most tool that you're going to use is the terminal. So you have to keep yourself with the terminal very well for you to, use Git easily. But again, you can also create these files using the graphical user interface. You can, add the folder, add the file, and add all those. So must we use Git terminal? No. Can also use the graphical tool too. Yes, can you revert to a commit? Yes, you can revert to a commit. Now, so for now, I've only added one commit. And for you to see this, you can use a command called git log. Okay. So when you do git log, we're going to see a commit that was made. And the commit has a very unique identifier to that particular commit. Okay. So we have this. Okay. And the author, again, these are the configurations that we made earlier. So I configured my username and my email. And you can also see the date that particular modification was made. Okay. Now I'm going to move out to this particular sector. So for you to do that, you press Q, which is quit on your machine. And I'm going to use another command, say git log hyphen one line. Now, if you do that, you can see I'm having the same logs, but now in a very fancy way. Just a minute. You can see I'm seeing the logs in a very fancy way compared to the other way that I had this. So this one is saying the commit, the author, the date, but if you jump and do with one log, you can see the unique identifier to that particular commit message and the text, or rather the message that was attached to that particular commit message. So how do you then revert back? Now, if you have this in your mind, what you do is you can copy this and then do git reset, okay? And then you have that, sorry. And then you have that unique identifier to that particular commit. When you do this, then it will take you back to the initial commit that you had. So again, it will take me back to where my file had nothing. Because I don't want to do that, I'm not going to press enter. Cool. So up to that particular point, we are now in a position to make a Git repository, make changes, and track these particular changes with the help of Git. Now, assuming now I want to, work on something different, right? So assuming you want to implement a new feature in your project. Normally what happens is these particular features are going to have different branches, okay? So different branches is just a way of doing something differently within the repo and not interfering with the changes that you have within your main branch. Remember, our main branch is called main. And for us to check that, you use a command called git branch, right? So if I do git branch, you can see I have one branch called the main, and it has a star. So the star means the current branch where we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another branch, I'm going to create another branch where I'm going to do something different. And for this case, I'll use the command git branch, then the branch name. Now, there are rules that are there to help you come up with the branch name. Now, assuming I want to create a new feature, it means the branch name will be named feature. So I'll have feature, then whatever feature I want to do. For instance, let me say, even add homepage, add about, okay? Right now, I'm working on a feature called add about, right? So I'm going to press enter. And for me to confirm if that particular branch has been created, I'll say git branch. And you can see now I have two branches. I have the main branch and the feature add about, okay? So I have branches, so two branches. And now I want to get to that particular branch, make the changes that I want to do, and then I'll find a way of taking these particular changes from that particular feature add about to the main branch. So to do that, you can use git switch then to the branch name. So our branch name was called feature about. So if you press enter, you can see I've switched to this particular branch, and you can also see from my terminal, this particular text is different with this. The reason why I have how this is for us to see the different branches where we are. So right now, I was within the main branch. I've switched to the feature about, and that is what I'm currently in. And for me to confirm this again, I'll do git branch, and you can see the star is now pointing at the feature and about. So it means the current active branch is the feature and about. When creating this particular branch, something to note, it comes with all the changes from the main branch, okay? So if I quit and jump to my VS Code, one thing I want you guys to see is where I'm clicking, where I'm hovering my mouse, you can see I'm working within this particular branch, and it has also the index.html. This particular index.html file was from the main branch, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the same thing that I have here, and I'm going to change this to home. Let me just say about page, okay? Again, when I'm doing this, I have to add, commit the changes that I'm making so that Git can keep track of everything that is happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to my terminal. Again, if I do git status, right, you can see I've modified a file called the index.html, right? And if I do git log with -p, I believe -p, you can see I'm seeing the different things that have happened in this particular file. So you can see this is the file, and if you press the enter key, sorry, okay, you can see I've added something here. Just a minute. Sorry about that. So that will show you just the changes that you made on this particular file. So I'm going to move this particular file from this stage to the commit stage again. You do git commit -message. That I'm going to do is I'm going to add a commit message. And for this case, I'm going to say add about header in the index file. Okay, press enter. Sorry, before git commit, sorry, I forgot. We should do git add, and I'm going to add the index.html, press enter, then do git commit. You can see I've taken a snapshot of that, and you can see it's telling you one file has changed and something has also changed in that particular file. Again, just to see the logs, you can say git log. Going to tell you I have two right now. So I have this, right, add about, and also I also have this here. So basically, that is how you check on that. So what I'm going to do again right now is I'm now going to bring the change that I had, or the that I have from the feature to the main, right? For me to do that, again, you git switch to that particular branch. So git switch to that particular branch, and my main branch is called main. So I'm going to do that. Then I'll use a command git, don't forget that, merge. Now with this command, you can either decide to attach a message to that particular command. So I'll say git add -m, whatever message you want. So I'll say merge from the about, right? And then the last thing you have to have is the branch that you want to merge to the main branch, right? And for us, our branch is feature. So let me zoom out a bit so that you can see. So my branch is feature, okay. About. So basically it means take the changes from feature about and bring those particular changes to the main. I'm going to have that and then press enter. So basically you can see something has happened and an update has happened, right? So if you go back to main, right, and check whatever we have, you can see now I have the change that was from the other branch. And that particular change is within the master branch. The master branch. So there is no big difference between git checkout and git switch. So they do the same thing. The only difference is how the changes happens. That is how you can merge changes from one branch to another branch, right? And the purpose of having the branches is not to interfere with whatever we have within the main branch, right? And you can continue working on other features, can also fix issues. And again, the naming convention of that particular branch is determined by what you want to do. For example, if you're fixing something, then it means my branch will be named differently. For example, I can have git branch with a fixed keyword before anything, right? So fix something. Okay, we're working on a feature something. So those are some of the rules that should govern you when naming these particular branches. Cool. So the next thing that I want to jump to is what we call a conflict. Okay. So how does a conflict work? What I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate that particular scenario. So what I'm going to do is right now, I'll jump to my feature folder, right? Right now, everything, the feature about and the main have the same changes. So I'll check out for that. So you can do check out, sorry. I do switch, so I'll check out to this feature about, press enter. So I've switched to this particular branch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch a different file and say about.html. Okay. If you do that, press enter, you can see I've added a file. And if you do git status, you can see I have this particular file. So I'm going to add this file and commit. So I'll say git add. So I'll say git add. And I'm going to combine these two commands. So you can either do that using this. So I'll say git add. And the file that I'm going to add is the about. And then after adding, I'm going to use an AND operator. So AND operator is to bring these two commands together. So git add the about. Then after adding, also add a git commit message to it. So add the about page. And you can see also have in mind the commit message that I'm having is completing the sentence. This commit will add the about page. This commit will do something. So press enter. So right now there's a change that is within my about, right? I'll jump again, I'll check out to master. So I'll say git checkout or switch, any can work. Main, sorry. Now within the main, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to, so first let me try to rebase so that I can see. Let me merge, add the about page and see if it's going to well. So it has worked. Okay. Now a git merge happens when a certain branch is over, or rather is ahead of a certain branch. Now, for instance, let me assume I have a change in the main that is not there within the about us. Okay. So when you try to make this particular, rather when you try to merge, the terminal will yell at you that there's a conflict. Or for instance, I have, for example, the same changes from one file to the other one, and I'm trying to commit this particular change that already exists, then the terminal will yell at me when I try to merge. So merge conflict happens mostly when you try to collaborate in a single project with someone. And I'll talk about collaboration in a bit, right? I'll talk about collaboration in a bit. So a conflict might happen, for example, I have a div with a class name that already exists somewhere. So when I try to push that, then the terminal will yell at me when I try to do that. So I can switch back to main. So to switch back is you do git switch, then the branch name. So git switch, then the branch name. Depends with the branch that you created. Maybe I'll pause there and ask if there is any question before I jump to the next thing. Maybe some reactions if you are okay. So merge works when you are currently in a branch that you want to merge it. Yes. So you have to be in that particular branch where you want to merge into, and then you now give the branch where you want the changes to come from. So that is why I had, where is that? Just a minute. That is why I had git merge. So you can see I want to merge, but I want to merge the changes to the main branch, sorry. So I have to be in that particular branch. Then I'm pulling them from where? So the feature about. Yes, so I'll talk about cloning and forking in a few. Just give me some minutes. Just talk about cloning and forking in a few. Now, with this in mind, basically what we've been doing is we've been making these particular changes in our local machine. But come to think about this. How then do we now handle a scenario where you want someone to contribute to your project? This brings me to a new concept or something we call GitHub, okay? So GitHub is a server somewhere that allows you to host your Git repositories. And apart from just allowing you guys to host your Git repositories, it also allows you guys to manage your project, to track your project, and also to allow collaboration when working on a project. So how then do we now use GitHub? So for us to use GitHub, the first thing you're supposed to have you're supposed to have an account at GitHub. Remember, it is a cloud-based server, okay? So you'll jump to github.com. You'll jump to github.com. And if you don't have an account, you'll have to create an account. So you'll have to create an account. So let me just sign out. So you'll have this. So click on sign up, create your account. And then after creating your account, you sign in. So I'm going to sign in to my account. So I'm going to use my credentials to sign in. Just give me a minute to sign in. Okay, just give me 1 second to authenticate. So when you authenticate, this is what you'll have the first time you log in. So what you'll do is going to create a repo, a repository. And for this case, the repository is on a cloud, not in our machine. So you can either do that using this new button. So you can click that new button, or you can click on this plus, then click on new repository. Both of them will take you to the same place. So creating a new repo, there are things you must have in mind. So the repo name, so I'll give it a name called webinar. You can give it a description, just describe what that particular repo entails. And then you also have an option to make it public or private. When it is public, it means it can be accessed by anyone. But when you have it private, it means it can only be accessed to few individuals. So I'm going to make mine public. And then there's option for adding a README, git ignore, and choose a license. I'm not going to talk about that for now. I'll just jump to create a new repo. Okay. So when you click on create a new repo, you're going to see this particular page. Now, this page has certain description or certain instructions. So the first instruction is create a new repository, and also there's instructions for pushing an existing repository. And for us, we already have a repository, but this particular repository is local to our machine. What I'm going to do is we're going to push now to an existing repository. I'm just going to copy this, go back to my terminal, and paste. So you can right click, paste, or do Control-Shift-V to paste that to your terminal. So basically what this means is just link this particular local repository to the repository that we have in this particular server. So this URL points to our server. This URL points to our server. So this points to this particular repository that we have. So we're going to give it a name origin, so git remote add, basically link this local repository to the remote repo that we have within that particular server. When you press enter, nothing happens, but for us to check if this was linked successfully, we use a command called git remote -v. So you can see it's telling me where I'm pushing and fetching this data from. So it means I can push to this particular repository, but I can also fetch data from this particular repository. So that is a command that I've picked from here. So the next command is just set your main branch as that. And for us already, we have our main branch is named main. And then the next thing is now to push to that particular branch. So you can do git push origin. This origin is the name we set when adding this URL. So that origin comes from here. the connection string. So git push origin, then the branch that you want to push to. So for me, I want to push into the main branch. So if you do that, we give it a few seconds, and you can see something has happened. Okay, so it says something to git this particular branch has been pushed. So if I go to GitHub, click on this particular repo name, you can see now I have some 2 files that have been added to this particular repo. So this is a GitHub repo. This particular GitHub repo has changes that are there in my local repo, repository. Okay, that is what repo is. So basically, I've pushed these changes from my local machine to the GitHub repository. So the GitHub repository is what we have online. The server that we have online, it is hosted in GitHub. And that is how you can push a change, or you can create a repository in GitHub and in your local machine and have those two linked together. And something to note, you can see right now I only have one branch in GitHub. You can see I only have one branch, and it is the main branch. But remember, we have 2 branches in our local machine. So how then we push this? For you to push the other branch and for you to push everything, you do git push - all. So basically, this will push every branch that is within your local machine to GitHub. So you can see a new branch has been created called the feature about. If you come here and refresh or click on this, you can see we have another branch that is added here. So we have the feature add about, and we also have the main branch, which is our default branch. Any question up to that point? Feel free to post on the chat. And also feel free to unmute. Cool, so I'm assuming silence means we are okay. Thank you so much. So we are learning a lot. I'm happy. Now, so we are at GitHub. So it means now we have the repository hosted in GitHub. I'm not going to talk about much with what we have within the interface, but just to take you through that. On the top, we have some navigation bar. We have the issues, we have the pull request, we have the actions, we have the projects, we have about the wikis. So when having issues, so issues are the changes that happens within your project. For example, maybe there's something that is not working well and you want to fix that particular issue, or you want to fix that particular change. You can create an issue to that, right? Think, for example, you can say maybe create something. You can, for example, create the HTML page in a very orderly way. You can do that and add, you can assign that particular issue to someone to review that particular change. And for this case, I'm the only person working on this particular project. You can see that. You can also add a label to that, so to easily track what is happening or the issue that you have. For example, if it's a bug, was it fixed? Yes. For example, if you have a question, for example, if you have a documentation that you're adding, and basically Git is like a social place where you can have a conversation about anything. And I'll give you an example. For example, if I create an issue right now, let me say create the entire page and submit this particular issue, it means we can have a conversation on this issue. Is this issue solved? Was this a real issue with someone else? So it's like a social place where you talk about an issue, talk about something, okay? So we also have a pull request. Now, a pull request is just you are making a change, but this particular change requires someone to review that particular issue, right? You require a third party, you require a second eye on that particular issue. So that is the point now you create a pull request, okay? So create a pull request, assign that particular pull request to someone, then that particular pull request will be automatically merged once that third eye or once that second eye has approved that particular pull request. So that is what happens within the pull request section. And I'll give an example. And then we have an action section where you can automatically integrate actions within your repo. For example, you can have a task, for example, a script that runs when someone has done something in your repo. This is the section where you have all those particular scripts within the actions tab. And then we have the projects section. So the project section is where we can now have it to help you basically to manage your project. You're going to have your issues. You can have the task assigned here. You can also add all those guys that you're working on that particular project within this particular section for project. So basically what it does, it gives you a dashboard where you can clearly have the task that you want people to do. It also give you a section to assign this particular task to individual members. Again, the main purpose for this is to help you in managing your project at large. And then you also have the wiki section. Think of this as the Wikipedia, but for this case, it's just for your own repo, where you can add many documentation as you want on this particular repo. And then you also have security, where you can implement security measures in this particular repository. Last but not least, we have the insights. So basically, it gives you an insight and a report, an overview of whatever is happening within your repo in terms of the open issues, the closed issues, the pull requests that were made in that particular repository. Can also give you an overview of the commits that were made in that particular repository. For us, we have 3 commits that were made by me. And then we also have the last section, which is settings, which has a lot of things which I'm not going to talk about, but I'm only going to talk about the collaborators. Remember, apart from just giving us a platform to host our code or to host our repositories, GitHub also gives us that chance where people can collaborate within that particular project. Now, for you to add someone as a collaborator to your project, you can do that through the collaborators section. So you can add a collaborator. You can add by the username or the name. You can search for anyone there, then add that particular user. So when you add someone here, they'll get a notification in their email, and they'll be in a position to access this particular repo, whether private or public, so that they can now start collaborating on your project. I'll pause there and take a few questions if there is. So someone said, so to log in again, you just click on sign up. It will take you through some steps there. You'll do some tests there, and then to create an account for you. That will help you. So an issue can be added by anyone. Yes, if you have an access to that particular repo, you can add the issues. And if it's public, you can also add the issues. So can you talk about web hosting via GitHub too? I'll talk about that in a few. Cool, so up to that particular point, we have an overview of the interface that we are using right now. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, something someone talked about, is the concept of forking and cloning. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this particular concept right now is majorly, this concept is used when you want to contribute to a project. Now, what is forking and what is cloning? So cloning basically means bring a copy of the remote repository. So when I talk about remote repository, I talk about whatever we have in github.com. So bring a copy of that to my local machine. So I'll give an example, okay? So this particular folder, this particular repository, when you check just next to the branches, we have the clone and the code bit. So on the code bit of it, I'm going to select the repository, the repo URL, right? This URL is like reference point to where we want, is like the reference point to our repository. So I'm going to click this. I'll jump to my terminal, right? I'll cd back to the desktop folder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder called webinar -clone. I'll press enter. I'll cd into that particular webinar clone. Right now it's empty, but I want to clone this repository. So cloning means bring a copy to my local machine, okay? So for you to do that, you use git clone, then the URL. So I'm using GitHub at github.com. Based on how you've configured your GitHub, for me, I'm using the SSH to interact with my GitHub. So if you're using HTTPS, we use this particular URL. If you're using SSH, use this particular URL. So I'm using SSH. When I come here and press enter, you can see it's cloning the webinar in my machine. So at the end of the day, if I cd into webinar, right, and do ls, you can see I have a copy of everything that is within my remote repository. The remote repository is the repository that we have in GitHub. That is what cloning is. Just clone, just bring a copy. Just bring a copy from GitHub to my local machine. That is what cloning is. Now, forking, on the other hand, means bring a repository from one profile to the other. Now, I'm going to give an example. So let me jump back to my profile. And I'm just going to choose someone's profile. Cool. I'm going to use this. Now you can see this particular repo is for someone else. And you can testify that from here. So it's coming from this user, and this user has this particular repository called the pair programming bot. But what I want to do is I want to have the same copy of a repository in my profile. So what do? It means you have to fork. The forking means take the entire copy of this repository from this user's profile to my profile, okay? So when you clone, that is happening when you fork, when you click on this fork, it will tell you where you want to fork to. So right now it says this already exists. And if I go back to my profile, and come here and check this, just a minute. Let me just do away with that. Let me just so let me create a fork. So I'm going to give it another name. I'm going to give it test and click on fork. And I want you guys to see what is happening. Right now you can see if I duplicate this and come back here, you can see it's saying this particular repo has been forked from this particular repo. So it means I've taken a copy of whatever he has on that particular repo, and I have the same things in my profile's name. And for this case, it has a different name. That's why I'm having the programming bot test. But the point is I've cloned, so that I've made a copy of the repo that he has in his profile to my profile. That is the difference between forking and cloning. Cloning means move it from GitHub to my local machine. Forking means move it from one profile to the other one, but within GitHub. That is the difference that happens between forking and cloning. Any question on forking and cloning? Yes, it is visible for other users. So the person is going to see I've cloned that particular project. Not cloning, forking. Cloning is not visible to anyone. Cloning is not visible to anyone. Forking is visible to the project owner. So again, cloning means take a copy of the repository from the remote server, in this case it's GitHub, to my local machine. But forking happens from one profile to the other. Right now, you can see, if I click here, let's compare. If I click here, you can see the about section that this person has on his profile is the same about section that I have on my profile. So in this case, I can do anything I want to this particular repository, and that won't affect whatever he has on his repository. Cool. Last but not least, I now want to talk about how we then now collaborate. Now, using GitHub. So assuming I have a branch, and for this case, let me just create a simple branch here. I'll come here and say git checkout, git branch, and I'm going to give it a branch, maybe fix about, right? I'll check out that particular branch. I'll switch that particular branch, and the branch is fixed about. After that, what I'm going to do is I'll just come to the about page and just add a boilerplate. So I'll say that, but I can say this one is on the about. Okay. After adding this particular change, I've just added some syntax here. I'll add this change to GitHub. So I'll say git add all. For this case, add everything. I've only made change in one file. So if you do git status again, you'll see the changes. Git fix, git add. I've already added. Okay. Just a minute. Git also I should commit. So git commit a message, and I'll say this commit will basically create the about boilerplate page. Okay, do that. Now, there's something that is happening here. So I'm currently not in that particular branch. Sorry, guys. This is the other webinar that we had. So I'll select that. So I'll select the webinar, enter. Sorry, guys. The webinar clone. So I'll select the webinar. So I have the main branch. I'm going to create this branch called fix about. Oh, sorry. So git branch that, then I'm going to switch to that particular branch. And if you do git status right now, you can see we have modified the about page. So we're going to add that. So do git add that. Git commit. Sorry. Do git add, git commit. That has been added. I'm now going to push this particular change to my branch. So the branch right now, it is not main, but I want to push the changes to fix about git push origin. Don't forget the origin keyword, fix about. So when you push this will move the changes to your branch. Now, in this case, it's going to move to fix branch because I believe I was fixing something in the about branch. Now, I want to create a pull request to the main branch. So a pull request means, again, have someone who is going to review your work, and then that work is going to be merged upon approval of that particular person. So how do we do that? So with GitHub, when I go back to that particular repository, let me go back to that particular repository, which is this one. When you move here, you can see giving you a fix about had some recent push some seconds ago. So you click on compare a pull request, or you can just create a pull request from this section. Create a pull request. Now this pull request, I have two checkboxes there. So I have the base and the compare. So the base is where I want the changes to go to. Now for this case, I want just to go to that particular main branch. But these changes are coming from somewhere. So they are coming from the fix about. When you do that, the changes are going to pop up, and then what you have to do is just click on create this particular pull request. So upon creation of a pull request, and there are things that you must have in mind. One is the reviewer. So the reviewer is the person who is going to review this particular change or this particular pull request, okay? And also you can have a label to this. For example, if it was a bug or something of that sort. You can also add a project to it. If you had a project board, you can also add a milestone to this particular project. But also you can also add a development to this. Sorry, you can also add a development to this. So development are just used to link this particular pull request to the issues that we had earlier. Okay, so you can see it will automatically close when this particular closes, an issue is closed. So when you close this particular pull request, the issue will be closed. I'm going to create a very simple pull request. Add the about boilerplate. You can boiler page. Sorry. You can also add some descriptions if you want, and then click on the pull request. So this pull request basically means, again, I'm taking some changes from what I was working on, and I want them to be merged to the main branch. Okay. So when this particular issue is merged to the main branch, it means the changes that I have within this particular branch will be taken to the main branch. So I'm going to close this and show you guys what I'm going to do is in the development, I'm going to link this issue, this particular pull request, with the issue I had. This issue, I had created the issue from the issue section. So I'm going to link this with that, okay? So I'm going to merge, and I want you guys to see what is happening. Right now, I have one issue here. And when I click merge and confirm that particular merge, when this has been merged and we go back to the issue, you can see my issue is now closed. It was open and now closed. The reason it's closed is because the issue was attached to this particular pull request. So with that, it means the changes from the fix about has now gone to the main branch. So let's check that. So if you jump to the main branch, right, you can see when I click on the about, I'm having this. These changes are coming from that particular branch. Now, the next question that might pop up in your mind is, all these things are happening within my GitHub repository. So how then do I now bring these changes from my remote, that is GitHub, to my local machine? There are many ways of doing this. So one, I'll jump to my terminal, right? And you can do git fetch, okay? So git fetch is going to bring the changes. You can do git fetch. Let's do that. It's going to fetch everything that has happened and bring them to my local repository. So when I do that and click on files and click on about us, sorry, let me check out to the main branch. So git checkout main branch. Then you do git fetch. Do git fetch, just a minute. Nothing happens. But if you come here, check, there's nothing. So what you'll do is I'll do git pull these changes from somewhere. So this means it will go to GitHub, pull the changes. This time I'm pulling, I'm not pushing. Don't forget that. This time I'm pulling from somewhere, and that somewhere is the main branch. So I want the changes that are on GitHub to come to my local machine. So when I do that, you can see something has happened on the about page. There's some additions that has happened. And if you check on the about page, you can see the changes have been pushed or pulled, sorry, from GitHub to my local machine. So that is how you can pull and push changes from your local machine to your GitHub and vice versa. Any question up to there? Any question up to that particular point? Any question up to that particular point? Just to do a recap of what I've talked about. I've talked about branching. So I've said branching allows developers to work on isolated features and then without affecting the main code base. And for us, our main code base was the main branch. So we had to create a branch, work on that particular branch, and then make the changes, or rather push changes to our main branch. So branching again allows developers to work on different issues without affecting the main branch. Cool. We also talked about a pull request, which again, for example, when you want to introduce a change, you have to do a pull request. For example, I was working on a branch, right? And I've made a pull request to the main branch. So basically, take the changes from that particular branch to the main branch. I also talked about branching naming convention. For example, I said one, use a descriptive name. If it's a feature, then it has to have that feature name, then whatever you're working on. And if it's a fix, then have the fix and whatever you're fixing. And then after doing that, again, you create a pull request so that the master or the main branch can have the latest changes. And I also talked about forking and cloning. I've said forking happens within the profiles and it happens in GitHub. And cloning means just take a GitHub repo from GitHub to my local machine. I've also talked about pulling and pushing. So pulling means take changes, or rather fetch changes from one point to the other. Pushing means take changes to that particular branch that you want things to go to. Since there are no more questions, I think I'm going to pause there, unless there's anything. If not, I think
I
I've
have a
to the
question.
end. Yes, go ahead.
I think I'm a bit confused. What's the difference between merging and pulling?
Merging and pulling. Now,
Yeah.
let's do a difference. Let me just jump to here. So what I'm going to do is let me jump to GitHub, okay? And within my index, I'm going to edit this particular file. Okay. And I'm going to just come here and have all this taken back to GitHub, do away with that, and then go to the commit that directly to the main. So let me just have that. Now, cool. So let's come here. So let me do first git merge. Remember, for us to merge, merge happens within my local repository. Okay? Merge happens within my local repository. It means I want changes to come from one branch to the other one within my local repositories. But when I'm pulling from a remote repository. I'm pulling from something that is within GitHub, not something that is within my local machine, okay? So for this case, for me to get the changes that I have from GitHub, I have to pull. So I'm going to say git pull, then the point where I want them to come from, okay? So I'll say git pull, okay, origin, then the main, because the main has certain changes. So this will bring changes from the main that is hosted on GitHub, right? To bring changes from that main to the main that I have within my local machine. On the other hand, within my local machine, I'll jump to another branch. Let me say, git switch, maybe fix about, right? And within the fix about, I'm just going to add something, right? On the about section. Let me just add a paragraph, right? Say testing, okay? Now, within my local machine, I want these changes to come from this branch to the main branch, okay? So I have to switch back, sorry, I have to switch back to the main, okay? But in this case, I want to merge, right, the changes from somewhere. And I want this to come from feature about, okay? Press enter. Something is not, oh, sorry, it's fix, sorry. So fix about, something is not working well, sorry. So git, I've not added that and committed that. So let me check out fix about. So do git status, something happens, so do git add that, do git commit with a message, add the paragraph, enter, I'll now do git checkout main branch. Sorry for that. Git checkout main branch. Then from the main branch, I want now to merge and fix. Now, you do this, I'll press X and tell you why. Basically, it means I've moved the changes from, rather, I've made the changes from my branch fix about to the main branch locally. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Welcome. Cool. Since there's no more questions, I hope you guys have learned something. With that, I'm going to end it there and take it back to Abby.
All right. Thank you very much, Albert. I believe everyone's expectations have been met. I remember I asked a question at the start on what expectations we have in the room. And this session has been very engaging. The chat box has been on fire. So I think everyone's question have been answered. But in case you have more questions, you can always follow Albert on LinkedIn. I believe you use the same name.
Yeah, the same name.
Yeah, so ask as many questions as you can there. And I'll also be sharing a recording of this session. So in case you joined late or would like to do some revision on what has been taught today, the recording will be available. In case of any questions about Moringa or our software engineering course, you can write to us on email at admissions@moringaschool.com or even ask the questions now if you have any. But this is it for us. We'll end the session here and be on the lookout for more sessions. We still plan to do more sessions within the year. We have a lot of events lined up for you, so please be on the lookout on our social media pages to know what's happening currently. All right. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you, Albert.